How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Bartonahay's World Episode 2, the show where I try to improve my skills at reporting, commentating, and telling everybody the news that I've been reading this past week. To start things off, the war. This is the biggest story of the whole weekend, a whole Memorial Day weekend, honestly, at least for me. It wasn't as Memorial Day weekend feeling. I think it was around Saturday. There was a lot of reports that the U.S. and Iran were they were giving everyone hope that this thing might come to an end. I don't want to say I fully believed it. Thankfully, I didn't, because literally 2 days later, the U.S. is sending missiles to ships in Iran that were supposedly placing landmines in the Strait of Hormuz. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. It makes sense that, nothing was confirmed. The U.S. was still firing missiles. Iran was still doing the landmines, or I guess the sea mines, which is crazy. But it sucks because it's almost like they're just kind of getting our hopes up. It's yeah, we're talking, we're trying to come to an agreement, and it's yeah, okay, well, let's hope that this goes through. Then you just see that 2 days later, missiles are being fired, and it seems like we're back at square one almost, or worse. And the thing that sucks the most about it, yes, there's the war going on, but the Strait of Hormuz, basically one of the world's biggest commerce routes, is still closed. After doing some research, even if it opened at this minute right now, it would still be more than a month, upwards of 2 to 3 months, according to reports. Things would go back to what we could consider normal, before February, whatever it was, 28th or something. And the issue is that it doesn't seem like it's going to go back to normal anytime soon. It just seems like it's this standoff that we're going to stay in for at least, I guess for now, if I were to make a prediction, the whole summer is just going to be this kind of, we're in agreements, we're fighting again, we're in agreements, we're fighting again. Gas prices are still high, although oil did fall a little bit, when we heard rumblings of a potential peace agreement, which is funny how the market works like that. This just sucks because, at least in America, summer, June, July, August, those are probably the most traveled months for Americans and a lot of countries around the world. Everybody wants to travel in the summer. Doesn't look like it's going to be cheap this summer. And it has to make you think, it's yeah, you get a raise at your job, but kind of just keeping up with these prices, or you're still behind. It's you can never just get ahead on these gas prices, man. But in a report by the New York Times, Max Barrick, Erica Solomon, Evan Ward, and Leo Sands, this was what scared me. The Iranian Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, this was a direct written statement from him. The hands of time do not turn backward, and the nations and lands of the region will no longer serve as shields for the American bases. At first read, it's okay, it's some Iranian Supreme Leader saying this, but what scares me the most, why does he have to use the language, the hands of time do not turn backwards? That is the most, almost evil villain type language right there. Scarier, to me, that's scarier than anything Donald Trump has ever said. The hands of time do not turn backward. That threw me off, and I had to share that quote with all of you. That was, again, that was a written statement that was received. I will be putting where I get my information from in the comments. Like I had mentioned in episode 1, the New York Times is my primary source for the news, comment sources that you'd like me to check out, but I will mostly be reciting world, global news from that and breaking it down, commentating, relaying that to you all. It's going to be a rough rest of the summer with this war going on. All we can hope is that, one of these times we hear some rumblings about a peace agreement and it actually goes through, and then we just have to wait, the 2 to 3 months for the strait to actually get back to normal. Because if they're placing mines, who's going to go through and check for all the mines? That's going to take time. But in some other news, the final episode of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert aired on CBS on May 21st. And this may not seem like a big deal to a lot of y'all. It didn't at first to me until I research more about this. Obviously, we know that late night television is a dying medium. It seems like there's a new face doing a late night show every single year, almost every single time that you tune in, because we don't tune in that much. This didn't mean a lot until I, understood the First Amendment and freedom of speech and the ability to kind of parody government and, poke fun at the government. CBS/Paramount, this, big conglomerate, I think Skydance is also a partner. They kind of pointed this out, that this was a financial decision, strictly financial. There's speculation around that, as there should be, because it's one of the most controversial times to be a journalist, political commentator, anything of the sort. Paramount just paid the UFC $7.7 billion for the streaming rights. And that's what concerns me. Yes, they may have been losing money, but I feel like it is just kind of wrong to take away some type of show that has the ability to criticize the government in a kind of comedic way, or just criticize the news in general. I know I said I wasn't going to get into, opinions and trying to force things on you all, which I'm never going to try to do that. But I will say that this is, I think, a step back for freedom of speech. We need, a late show, someone to throw shots at the government and see what happens, because we're allowed to. We have the freedom to do that. I feel like there should be a cable network that does that and not just YouTube channels. How could you feel comfortable writing any type of joke about the U.S. government at this point? Shout out to Stephen Colbert. It's honestly inspiring, his story, as for someone in my position. I feel like a late night show would be an awesome thing to host. His final guest on his show was Paul McCartney, who is just a legend. So pretty awesome way to go out. I just wanted to talk about Ebola as well real quick. Hantavirus has kind of simmered down. I couldn't find too much information about that. Doesn't seem like a concern, so you can all, let your breath out about hantavirus. But Ebola is a little bit of a different story. I don't want to say we should be worried about it, but we should be concerned for the place that it is currently impacting, which is the Congo and the surrounding countries in Africa. Because by what I've been reading in a report by Declan Walsh, an author for the New York Times, is that they are ill prepared for this situation. They're days behind of actually setting up proper areas to quarantine people and ways to disinfect things, and what you would expect as a typical setup for what was considered by the World Health Organization is a global health concern. We're going to keep monitoring Ebola. Like I mentioned last episode, it's flipping Ebola, so we should be worried about this. Yes, it's not affecting us, but it is affecting people, and that is sad. So we're going to switch to NHL real quick. The Golden Knights are up 3-0 on the Colorado Avalanche, which I don't want to say anybody really expected this, considering the fact that the Avalanche went 4-0 on the Kings, and then 4-1 on the next series against the Wild. Tonight, while I'm recording this, Vegas plays, so while this video is up, you'll see if the Vegas Golden Knights won the series or if the Avalanche takes it to another game. I don't see the Avalanche coming out of this game. I think the Knights are going to the Stanley Cup. Carolina's up 2-1 on the Canadiens. Crazy as it sounds, I think this is it for the Canadiens. They just dropped 2 games straight in overtime. We knew that Carolina was dangerous based on the previous series. I think it's going to be a feisty one. Maybe game 6, Carolina closes things off. But in NBA, the New York Knicks swept a 4-0 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I don't want to say I expected this at all, especially with how competitive the previous 2 Cavaliers series have been and how good they played at home. But that didn't matter for the Knicks. I had talked about how, the long break, because they 4-0'd the 76ers, would maybe be a negative, but they didn't lose a step. And what's interesting about the Knicks is that it is really a solid team. And what I mean by that is that every single player on the starting lineup, on the bench, is making things happen that are leading to victories. Shout out to the Knicks. I'm going to be rooting for them in the finals. They're going to be going up against either the Thunder or the Spurs, which we'll get into. Before we move on from this series, I want to pose a question to you all. Should LeBron try to go on the Cavs? Is that the final missing piece? That would be one heck of a way to go out. Thunder versus the Spurs, that series at 2-2 right now. I honestly could see this being a 7-game series. It just seems so back and forth every single night. I apologize, I'm not watching, these full NBA games, but I'm just kind of looking at stats to report to y'all. And then moving on from sports, we're just going to go into some entertainment. I want to keep that for last because it's definitely the least important thing out of all of the stuff I'm talking about. But Drake, the music artist, he is expected to have his 14th #1 Billboard smash, Janice STFU, off of his new album Iceman. What do you expect from somebody who's been in the game this long with that much popularity and that much fandom? We already knew he was the streaming king, and this doesn't really surprise me that much. All 3 of his albums, Iceman, Habibti, and Maid of Honor, have made the top 1, 2, and 3, respectively, in that order for the Billboard Hot Albums. I didn't expect this to go any other way. I mean, what else are people listening to on the first week that these come out? To me, this is just Drake showing his power in the music industry, but what concerns me is the longevity of this. Yes, it's the first week. Like I had mentioned, all 3 albums are going to be at the top. I believe there's expected to be 42 songs from the what I think are 54 total that were released on the Billboard 100, which makes sense. Everybody's streaming this, but not everybody is going to be streaming this next week. I want to make a prediction that we might even see like one of the biggest falls in Billboard history, because yes, everybody's streaming the whole Iceman album. Everybody wants to give it, that one listen and make their opinion. There obviously are people that are listening to it multiple times. I will admit myself, I have been listening to it a lot, actually. I enjoy Iceman, Habibti. I only listen to Maid of Honor once or twice. There's a time and place for those songs. It's like club songs, not really driving to work at 7:30 in the morning songs, if that makes sense. But I do like Drake's songs. That's awesome to see that he has all of these records. He did surpass Michael Jackson. Michael Michael Jackson has 13 number one smashes. Drake just had his 14th. But summer is the perfect time to continue this reign of dominance for Drake. So if my prediction's wrong, I completely get it because it is summer, but this isn't sustainable to have weeks of this dominance. I was honestly surprised that Janice STFU was the number one smash because I think there's better songs on Iceman than Janet STFU, but it's all about streaming. That was episode 2 of Bartonahay's World. Obviously, some stuff I have to work on is I feel like I'm like speaking a little bit too fast, but at the same time, it's just kind of the setup I'm in right now. I could definitely make a more like relaxed setup, but at the same time, like it's the news. I got to be fast paced, and you know, this is just, again, I'm getting reps doing this stuff. Thank you to everyone for the support on episode 1. I was actually pretty awesome to see some new faces in the comments, so thank you all. I'm not exactly sure what the show is going to hold besides just seeing what's popping and telling it to y'all. I already mentioned it once, but the New York Times, I'm getting my sources from that for anything current event wise. I do want to expand my reach, drop some comments. See everyone in episode 3 next week, and have a nice day. Bye.